Hey, this is Greg Yetter. I want to do something a little bit different this week, and that's to give a behind the scenes look at what we're doing with the new Bedtime Bulb product, my journey toward creating this product, where I think the next steps are, and ultimately how I define success. Embedded within this video, you might find some advice that's based on my own entrepreneurial journey. This is going to be very unscripted, long form, with lots of ums and, that kind of thing. So let's jump right into it. I've got my outline here. So I was inspired by this series that was done by Kevin Rose, who was the founder of Dig, I believe. It's an old school news site. And I've been following him for a while. And about a year or two ago, he put out an app called Oak for iOS. This is a meditation app, and it's free. And in my opinion, this is actually the best meditation app there is. It's nice and simple, no upselling. It's got a great interface, some nice gamification that goes along with it. And what Kevin did that was really interesting was that he started a private Facebook group for private beta testers. And every couple of days, he would post videos and questions about the product to show the progress and to show what kind of decisions were being made. And if I'm not mistaken, they made hundreds or even thousands of changes before they released the product based on the feedback that different users gave them. So that's really fascinating to me that, they created this great app and they had some great ideas to start, but it wasn't all them. It was also the community contributing back. And maybe if this becomes a series, even though my product is a hardware product and it's a little bit harder to iterate on, there's still a lot you can do. And maybe this is a back and forth between us. So we'll see. And the other series that I'm inspired by, and I haven't watched all of these videos, but the company 37 Signals, which I believe is now called Basecamp, they are based out of Chicago, but most of their team is remote all over the world. They have a lot of contrarian ideas about startups, such as not taking VC money and going for slower, profitable growth, trusting employees wherever they are. And they started a series on YouTube called Getting Real, and it gives some insights into their processes and how they build products. So I was really inspired by those two series to create something that exposes the development of a product, but from a hardware perspective, because maybe there's something like this out there, but I haven't seen it. And I think this will help me become a better entrepreneur if I'm able to articulate my ideas and what I'm doing better. And we'll see. Let me know what you think. So let's go into why I decided to start Bedtime Bulb. I've been working in lighting for a long time. Actually, my first word was light. So I've pretty much been doing lighting my entire almost 26 years of existence. When I was growing up, I built a animated holiday lighting display in my parents' front yard. And thank you, parents, for supporting that. It was not cheap. But it really inspired a passion for lighting in me. I'll try to put a link to some of my old shows that I did. This thing kind of grew out of hand. But anyway, when I was in college, I found this lab that was looking at the links between light and health and how lighting specifically affects our circadian rhythms. So if you don't know about the circadian rhythm, this is the body clock, and it's basically what tells us when to be tired and when to be awake, when to be hungry, and a bunch of other things. And it turns out that light has a pretty significant impact on the body clock. Now, the way this works is that our body actually reacts to the blue component of light. So if you think about white light, if you think about a prism, shining white light through a prism, it scatters out into all the colors of the rainbow. And one of the colors, of course, is blue. Well, it turns out that these cells in our eyes are responsive just to the blue light. And what this does is when the eyes see blue light, they tell the body clock that it's daytime. There's actually a mechanical link in the body that says blue light is daytime. And why this worked from an evolutionary perspective was because the sun is white and very bright and contains all the colors. So blue light is contained in the sun. And at nighttime, there's moonlight, and it does contain a little bit of blue light because it's actually a reflection of light from the sun. But it's a lot dimmer and it's a lot less blue. So these cells that are sensitive to blue light, from a evolutionary historic perspective, were triggered during the day, and at night they were not active. So this is actually what they call this entrainment, and our body clock is reactive to the daily change of blue light and then no blue light. So when it's blue, it's daytime, and there's no blue, it's nighttime. I made a video about this that I'll link so you can check it out. But the problem is that our modern sources of light, like these great studio lights that I have here, and our computer screens, especially the LED lighting in our homes, and it's very efficient and everything, but all these modern sources of light tend to produce a lot of blue, and the problem is that it tricks the body into thinking it's daytime. So what we want to do is actually get rid of most of that blue at night in those last, ideally the last few hours, but especially in that last hour before bed, you really want to turn down the blue light, because if not, you're actually giving incorrect signals to the body clock, and this can lead in the short term to sleep disruption, fatigue, accidents, that kind of thing. And in the long term, like a chronic lack of sleep is a problem for a bunch of diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's disease. So if you can sleep better in the short term, you'll actually have long run effects, and you might be able to live longer. So what we're trying to do here with Bedtime Bulb is create a light bulb that looks like a normal light bulb, but it provides a nice, comfortable, warm light, and we get rid of most of the blue. And what that does is it promotes relaxation. It doesn't provide much of a trigger to the circadian rhythm. And then that hopefully should help you sleep better. So that's the motivation for Bedtime Bulb. And I've actually created a bunch of products in this space. Most have been for commercial lighting and have been a lot more complex. I started a software company. Actually, that was the first company I started, and it was really cool what we were building. We were building software to make lights change colors throughout the day so that you would have lots of blue during the day and almost no blue at night. But it was, and it was awesome, don't get me wrong, but I think it was a little too early for the market. And also, I think it was a bit too much of an ambitious project for being a first-time founder. And, for bootstrapping, we didn't have any external funding. So, I made some mistakes and learned a lot from it. But what I've come to realize over these past few years, starting a company, I actually sold that company. I worked for another company, and they weren't really ready for this kind of thing, although they wanted to go into this space, and I think they still do, is that people really need something simple and affordable. And I also think that the commercial market is not quite ready for circadian lighting or human-centric lighting. The thing is, the existing solutions on the market don't really address the problem, or, I think that there's room for another solution on the market. There are some light bulbs that get rid of most of the blue light, but ultimately they they're too bright. They're not really meant for the nighttime, and they're kind of ugly. They look like these futuristic light bulbs. You can buy orange glasses, which you wear at night, and they actually get rid of most of the blue pretty effectively. But you pretty much wouldn't want to go out of your house with these things, and even if you live with somebody, they might not want to see you in it either. Of course, you can use Flux and Night Shift on your computer, and those are actually great for your computer and your smartphone. But there's still a lot of blue light in the general lighting in your home and other spaces. So Bedtime Bulb is a solution for getting rid of most of the blue light in your environment. And what I think is better about it is the color quality is better. It looks a lot better in the environment. It's also the right kind of light that you would use at night. Like even the other light bulbs that are on the market right now, they're still too bright, in my opinion. And we're doing testing on this to make sure. But, I think that the light is not really calming that comes from those things. So that's an issue that we're trying to address. I'm not a huge fan of the word entrepreneur, but I guess I could call myself a serial entrepreneur right now, having been an entrepreneur, and then now starting a new company. But for me, it's not really about, do I want to be an entrepreneur? It's more, I think that I have a solution to a major problem in the world, which is access to unhealthy lighting, where, in the first world, people are getting way too much blue light at night. And this is all over the world now because LEDs have spread so fast, and other sources of light like halogen also have a lot of blue in them, but less than LEDs. But I think that there's a need in the market that is not being addressed, and I've actually think that I've gotten better at identifying the problem over time. I started that really complicated company and then scaled it back now to something that is a lot more simple, a lot more affordable, so that I can push it out to the market. And also, I think that it's a lot lower risk and ultimately something that people, I think, will resonate with. And that's something that if we keep doing these videos, we'll get into. So as an entrepreneur, as someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, I think you need to ask yourself, if you're trying to start something, what is the thing that I know that's not being addressed properly? So for me, it was, I have a lot of experience in lighting in a number of aspects, including sourcing components. So like working with China and getting products from overseas. I have a lot of experience in that. But I also, I'm probably one of the very few people that have lighting sourcing experience and also really care about this blue light problem. So for me, it's a perfect fit because I think it's a huge issue and I want to solve it. And I already tried something for a commercial market, and then I tried to work for a company that was addressing the commercial market. And ultimately, I found that while there was an interest in those spaces, the market is not really ready yet. But so here's a story that I love to tell. A couple years ago, I was in the Apple store here in Philly, and a little old lady walked in, and she held up her phone, and she was like, to the person working there, she asked, "How do I get the orange lighting back on my phone?" And if you know Night Shift, which is a feature of the iPhone that you can enable, it reduces most of the blue light at night. Now, I'm not sure whether she just liked the appearance of the orange lighting or that she actually knew about the blue light problem. But I think that, there are probably millions of people in the US that know about this issue. And I think that a lot of them would be willing to pay a certain amount of money to address this issue. So if you're asking yourself an entrepreneurial question, what do I want to do? Do I really have a problem that I really care about, that I know that there are no solutions for? And, is that something I need to go start myself, or can I go for a less risky path and, go work for a company that's already working in this area? And I think you need to feel that out. So let me know if you have any questions about that, but that's my opinion about entrepreneurship. It's almost like I'm a reluctant entrepreneur. Like, I didn't necessarily want to do this, but I think that the world needs it and nobody else is really doing this. So it's my job to do so. So looking at the different types of startups, probably most covered are software startups versus hardware startups. Hardware startups are a lot more difficult because your iteration cycles are a lot longer. They're usually more capital intensive. They cost more money to contribute to. That's not always the case. If you're building something that's pretty complex software-wise, as I was in my former company, and we were bootstrapped, we really needed more programmers but couldn't really afford them. So it really depends. But, you can make software changes. Like, a lot of companies with enough engineers make multiple changes per day. They ship multiple changes to their software per day, or at least a few changes per week. And, a hardware product, you're looking at months of turnaround time. So for me to de-risk this blue light for consumers problem, it's really about simplifying what the solution is. So instead of this crazy lighting that talks to your Fitbit or Apple Watch, it can see your circadian rhythm because it looked at the sleep tracking app that you're running on your Apple Watch, and it can automatically adjust the color and brightness of the lighting throughout the day. I think that there's a place for that, no doubt, and maybe that's something we'll get to in the future. But right now, that's not the core problem. It would be a lot to develop that. And I already made that mistake. I think the core problem is, are people willing to spend money a little bit more than they would on a regular light bulb, but not a crazy amount? We're talking like $20 to get rid of most of the blue light in their environment. And this is about the simplest solution to this problem that you can make. But a good product coupled with good marketing, I think, that's the key. And then over time, we can add features based on feedback. Maybe we need to adjust the pricing. Maybe people would be willing to pay more. Maybe they're not willing to pay more than a regular light bulb to get rid of blue light. These are the kind of things that we need to figure out. So there's a term called MVP. If you've been in the startup world, you've almost definitely heard it. It stands for minimum viable product. And Bedtime Bulb is our minimum viable product because we're already working with a manufacturer that's familiar with making light bulbs, but they haven't made low blue light bulbs. We're really just tweaking some of the components. And not to say that that's easy. It's still hard. I still spent a year trying to find the right manufacturer. I took a trip to Asia, China, those kinds of things to figure this all out. It takes a lot of work. It's not like you're just going to find something on Alibaba that's already ready to do what you want. Well, maybe you will, but in my case, I was actually told by a lot of manufacturers, why would you want to do this? People want to buy the thing that you can already buy in the store. And why would you want to sell anything different? Well, I don't want to sell a commodity. I don't want to sell the same thing that everybody else is doing already. I want to fix the problem that I care about. So, this is my own reflection mostly, but maybe you'll see some of my entrepreneurial advice, wisdom in there. Let me know what you think. Okay. So sourcing a product overseas is a pretty difficult challenge. Um, Thankfully, the last company I worked for, I got some pretty good experience with this. We were sourcing commercial lighting products, mostly from China. And you have to have a lot of patience is the main thing. You might be able to find what you want through Alibaba, and there are definitely some good manufacturers on there, but there's a lot of junk. Um, and I think that there's, you know, I think that there's a historic stigma about China and other Asian countries that the quality is low, and there are definitely, especially newer manufacturers in Asia that are turning out a lot of low quality product, which for lighting at least doesn't really work in the U.S. market. We have a lot of safety standards, like there's this thing called UL, which pretty much every good lighting product has, and most of the stuff coming out of China would actually not qualify for this UL listing. So that's something that's really important. The quality, the flexibility. You have to work on, where am I going to get my capital from? Is it bootstrapped? For me, the case is I'm using my own money right now to fund this, and that may change. But right now, the company is funded myself. Can you get the MOQ down? So for a hardware product, the MOQ is the minimum order quantity. Like how many units do you have to order in an order? So you need to, and a lot of times, you might have to order like multiple thousands of units at a time, depending on the type of product. And you can usually negotiate to some extent with a manufacturer, but you can't get it down to like the single digits usually, because the manufacturer also has to source components, and they are also dealing with minimum order quantities. So it's difficult, and if this is something that you'd like me to elaborate on more, I'd be more than happy to. Um, Now, one component of Bedtime Bulb, and I haven't seen this with any lighting product, except for some niche products, is social entrepreneurship. So this is a capitalist product. We're taking your money and we're giving you a physical item in exchange, right? And that's great, and that's a great way to do business. And there are actually a lot of people in the world. What the two that come to mind, especially, are Richard Branson and Blake Mycoskie of Tom's Shoes. You're probably familiar with Tom's. Both of these entrepreneurs talk a lot about giving back to the world in some ways, and also Bill Gates is like this, but it's a little bit different the way he does things. He's more of a philanthropist, whereas Tom Shoes is probably the most obvious example, where for every pair of shoes you buy, they give shoes to someone in need. And what's really interesting about their model is they're not just giving the shoes away for free, they're actually helping local people in various regions of the world make more money. So it's a capitalist system. You see this with Warby Parker, the eyeglasses company, where for every pair you buy, they give the gift of healthy sight to other people. And it's the same kind of deal. Some of it's just giving, but a lot of it is helping local entrepreneurs. So what I've identified with lighting, there's a huge problem in the world where 1.5 billion people still don't have access to stable electricity. And a lot of these people still have to resort to using kerosene lanterns and other gas lighting, which is unsafe, unhealthy, and expensive. So unsafe in the case of millions of people in India alone get burns from these sources of light every year because they tip over and various accidents that happen. Unhealthy, the fumes that are emitted by kerosene lamps, it's like smoking 2 packs of cigarettes every day. And they're also expensive. In some really poor regions of the world, just fueling these lights might take up, it might cost up to 40% of a family's income. So that's not super ideal. And there's a solution to this problem, and it's solar electricity coupled with LED lighting. So in some cases, that might be funding solar projects in various regions around the world to give people access to a relatively stable electricity supply where there was none. In other cases, it might be subsidizing solar lanterns and other forms of solar lighting. So it's like an LED light that's attached to solar and other renewable sources of energy, and maybe subsidizing these for local entrepreneurs so that local people can make a living. Of course, the cost would be at a lower rate than, something equivalent we might buy in the US, but it would make sense for the local market. And I think that by doing this, we can make lighting safer and healthier for people, and also do our part to help reduce the cycle of poverty, to give people access to stable light, which allows them to read at night, and all of the safety benefits that you get from lighting. There are a number of benefits that lighting provides, that if you have access to good lighting, we can lift some of these people out of poverty, and ultimately, get those last 1.5 billion people into a better state where they're able to contribute and be more modern people. So that's the goal with Bedtime Bulb, why I want to do this. So there are just a few thoughts on why I created Bedtime Bulb, how I got here, what the product is all about, how we're contributing back. I'd love to do more of these, such as the approach that we're taking with marketing, which is a lot different than any other lighting company that I've seen, and maybe some other thoughts about the business. So let me know if this is something that's interesting. I'd love to give you feedback. Am I rambling too much? Do you not like the informal style? Do you like the informal style? What kind of questions can I answer, or what do you want to know about me and what we're doing with Bedtime Bulb? Please let me know. And I look forward to making the next one if you think that's a good thing for me to do. Thank you.